The Nintendo Switch 2 has set a record, and ladies and gentlemen, it's just good news and gravy from here. All today on TNT Big Show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Michelle Nantucket.
And this is Sean.
Welcome to TNT Big Show, and boy, this is great news for not only Nintendo, but for video games in general, because in the last couple of years, the video game industry has kind of went down a little bit, but things just seem to be on an upward trend thanks to AA huge hits like Fantasy Life, Split Fiction, Obscure 33. Those games have been hugely popular, and now Nintendo is back with a whammy. The Switch 2, according to Nintendo, sold 3.5 million units worldwide since its release June the 5th in 4 days. This is the biggest launch for any console ever. Not Nintendo console, although Nintendo put Nintendo console, but it really ever. The PlayStation 5 and 4, their records have been blown out of the water. Good for Nintendo for this. I'm very excited. This is incredible news because, you know what, I'm switching here, but we'll talk here in a minute about the games. We're going to talk about the impact that this is going to have for the Switch 2. So anyway, here we go. Now, Nintendo, yes, from their Kyoto office, Mr. Shantaro Furukawa did talk about that it sold over 3.5 million units. This is the highest global sales level for any Nintendo hardware within the first 4 days. Well, from what people are saying, you can just go on the internet and look. Places like GameStop, Target, and Walmart are gone. Best Buy, gone. You know, and people are like, I see some, I go in, yeah, they're restocks, and then like an hour or two later,
gone, yeah.
You know, that's just something, the word of mouth is great on this system, and that's only gonna hold up better for this. You know, the Nintendo Switch now is a brand name. You know, we all know Nintendo is, but Nintendo finally has their identity. And sometimes I think this outrage from some people who criticize Nintendo are just them being hypocrites, because what was it before? We wish Nintendo would settle on an identity and quit doing this quirky, gimmicky stuff. Nintendo doesn't do that with the Switch 2, but they still add innovation like the video chat and the mouse controls and the first system to really lean on DLSS and VRR and HDR. And what is it now? Nintendo, we miss that quirky side.
No, you don't. We're a liar. Just like we wish Nintendo would have better graphics. No, you don't. No.
A lot of these people, folks, you gotta remember, they're in their mid-40s now.
They have no life, and they're incels, and they live in their mom's basement.
And a lot of it is just still how they haven't forgiven Nintendo for some of the mistakes they made in the 80s and 90s. And now they think that with the Switch 2 coming out, this was their chance to pounce, because Nintendo, like, yes, they would have the NES, the Super NES, but then the 64 and GameCube went down a little bit. Then they went back up with the Wii, then went down with the Wii U.
And back up with the Switch.
Right.
And they thought they would go back down with the Switch 2, and it did not happen.
Right. But for people who say, well, Nintendo has this up and down, no. They had two ups. Now, I know what people are saying, well, the Super NES didn't sell as much as the NES. No, but it sold 50 million units. Come on.
So the Genesis.
Yeah, just 10 million less than the NES. Come on, people. You know, but yes, the 64 now sold 34 million units compared to the PlayStation's 100 million. The GameCube sold 21 million compared to the PlayStation 2's 150 million. But then the Wii happened. Now, I think what a lot of Nintendo haters are so scared of is Nintendo, they found their wheelhouse and they're going to stick with it now.
Well, and also what they're scared of, because here's what it's been for decades. You buy Nintendo for first-party games and underpowered third-party games. You buy Sony for lousy first-party games and high-definition graphical third-party games. Now, you buy Nintendo for the great first-party games, and now the great high-graphical third-party games.
Yeah.
And with Sony, you buy, well, really, I don't know why you buy, because they have lousy first-party games, except for Astro Bot. But they have lousy first-party games and on-par graphics with the Switch 2 now. So which would you rather buy? A system that has lousy first-party games and third-party games, or a system that has great first-party games and great third-party? Which one would you want?
Yeah.
Which one?
Well, and even if you like Sony's first-party games, there's like only one a year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been real disappointing because I like the Horizon franchise myself, but it and God of War were it, basically, in 22. And this year, it's just basically Ghost of Yotai. And
last year, it was just Astro Ball.
Yeah, Death Stranding 2, but I'm not a fan of Death Stranding, but, this year you basically got 2 games, and next year you're going to have Wolverine and Intergalactic. You may get 1 or 2 games a year now, and with Nintendo, you're guaranteed at least 7 or 8 big Nintendo games a year, plus now you're going to get third-party games. And if you don't believe me, go listen to the reviews on Nintendo Life, Nintendo World Report, Gaming Bolt. Look, I got my problems with these people, but when you want to listen to them, though, they're saying that Street Fighter 6 on the Switch 2 looks just as good as the PS5 Pro version. Not the PS5 version, the PS5 Pro version. And that it is way better than the Series S version. One of our subscribers, I'm sorry I just have to say this, you got it wrong. You said, well, the World Tour mode runs 30 frames on the Switch 2, but 60 on the Xbox. No, it doesn't. On all versions except for the high-end PC, this has been tested out, even by people that are not Digital Foundry, but are actually more reliable than them. But even Digital Foundry said this, that the World Tour mode runs at 30 frames per second on all consoles.
And we're talking about the Street Fighter 6 World Tour mode.
Yeah.
Everybody may confuse it with Welcome Tour.
No. We're talking about the World Tour mode in Street Fighter 6. Yeah. But, Cyberpunk, which does run at a lock 30 frames in quality mode, and then 40 frames in performance mode. But, a lot of people actually say they like the Switch 2 version a little better because of the mouse controls. Obviously, people are going to love the PC version, but for them to say that they love the Switch version as well, that makes me happy. That's what it is. The third-party games, they're selling on the Switch 2. Here are some articles that I got, and this one's from Nintendo's Soup, saying that the Switch 2 has sold nearly 200,000 units in France, and it overtook the PS5, which sold 107,000 units. It's the fastest selling console ever in France. And that Mario Kart World had a 95% attach rate. Dang. This was on Blue Sky with Stealth. Somebody showed that Cyberpunk is selling out constantly. Ezreal. She pointed this out on Threads, and Blue Sky, that Cyberpunk is selling out. And Mario Kart, Street Fighter, Split Fiction, all of them are doing incredible.
Yes, and especially in Japan, where Mario Kart World has debuted with over 700,000 copies.
Yep.
Meaning, it looks like people don't mind paying $80 for the game.
If it's a game they like, they're going to pay for it. That's, whether we like it or not, that's just how it is. Nintendo Life is one of the only places that'll do that. They tell the percentages of the games that are bought on each system. Then the Switch 2 had the 4th highest debut for a system in the UK of all time. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 to 160,000, and that may not have beat the PlayStation 4, 5, or Xbox Series X and S, but it still had an incredible debut, and Mario Kart World was the #1 selling game.
Yep.
Hogwarts Legacy was second, and now the Switch 2 version only sold 19%, but a lot of people are saying that they're just getting the patch for their Switch game and just upgrading it to the Switch 2. So that makes sense. But the #4 seller in the UK, Cyberpunk, 94% on the Switch 2.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase that. 94% on the Switch 2. Now, we all know about Tears of the Kingdom. It's #5, 85% Switch 2. Another one, #6, Street Fighter 6, Years 1 plus 2 Fighters Edition. 98% Nintendo Switch 2.
Yeah.
Breath of the Wild, 85%. Rune Factory, 55% Switch 2, 45% Switch. And then further down the line, you have Yakuza Director's Cut, but number 21 is Split Fiction with 69% on the Switch 2. Number 24, Sonic Shadow Generations, 80% on the Switch 2. And 27, you have Hitman World of Assassination with 80% on the Switch 2. This is saying that people are loving their third-party games on the Switch 2.
Yes, and they are buying them and buying them.
Yeah.
And what's this telling to the third parties? We may have skipped the Switch 1 last time. We're not going to skip the Switch 2.
Right. You know, Nintendo made sure this time that the Switch 2 can compete with Sony and Microsoft when it came to power. Again, don't go by raw specs.
No.
It's the chips and the features in the games is why games like Street Fighter and them can hold their own. And sometimes even some of the games look better on the Switch 2 because of the DLSS.
I know. I mean, really, I want to clear something up. I want video games to stop blaming Nintendo for the game key cards.
Yeah.
Nope. Blame the third parties. It's what they wanted. If Nintendo didn't make game key cards, guess what? We wouldn't have Street Fighter 6. We wouldn't have Madden.
Yeah.
Call of Duty. Yeah, we wouldn't have them.
Yeah.
We would not have those games. And, you know, as much as I don't like them, I'd rather have the games than not.
Well, also, look at Doom, The Dark Ages. Even on the PlayStation 5 and then when you get the disc, it's like 20 megabytes of the game is on there, and basically you have to download the rest of it. It's like that on all systems
All
now.
systems with the majority of games.
That sucks, you know, but that's just the climate we're living in. I hope they can find some way to do games different.
Well, yeah, but like I said though, Marvelous, Limited Run, and Nintendo, and CD Projekt Red, there are still some companies out there that do physical.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. Now in Japan, according to Nintendo Everything, the Famitsu sales charts for June 2nd through the 8th, and really with the Switch 2 was 5th through the 8th. But it was the #1 selling system, and this did not include My Nintendo Store sales, which when you did, they were over 1 million units. But without that, it was still 947,931, excuse me. And the PlayStation 5 was 14,000, the Switch OLED 8,000, Switch Lite 6,000, PS5 Pro 4,000, Switch 2,000.
And real quick, I know we're talking about the Switch 2. I want to say something about those numbers on the Switch OLED. It's going to beat the PS2. You can't stop it. People are still buying the Switch. You thought when the Switch 2 comes out, no more Switch 1 sales. Right.
I mean, the PlayStation 4 still sells.
Yeah.
It still sells 500,000 to 1 million every year.
Yeah.
There are people that still want to buy it, you know.
Yeah.
And now the games, we had Mario Kart World #1 with 782,566. Now I'm only going to go by Switch 2 games. The next one was Room Factory with 10,000. Tears of the Kingdom with around almost 8,000, Breath of the Wild 7,500, and Yakuza Director's Cut 7.4 thousand. Now, that may not sound like the best, but you got to remember they're also doing key card games as digital, and the Nintendo eShop charts have like Street Fighter 6 as #5. You know, that game is doing really well on the sales charts. So, and if you go down, you'll still see Bravely Default, Street Fighter, and Cyberpunk in the top 30 sellers. So I think when you add digital in there, they're higher. Also from Nintendo Everything, Switch 2 is Nintendo's fastest selling hardware ever in the US. And this says, according to the information provided by Nintendo, Switch 2 is the fastest selling Nintendo hardware in the United States. That's based on the system's first 4 days of availability. On top of that, we're also hearing that Switch 2 sales in all regions were approximately twice those of Switch 1 across both consoles' first 4 days on the market. And finally, from My Nintendo News, this is about Spain. And Spain was never a big Nintendo market until last generation when the Switch 2 came out, or excuse me, the Switch 1, and it became a huge success in Spain. But the Switch 2 had the biggest debut ever with 108,000 systems. 54,000 for the PSP, 48,000 for the PS5, 45,000 for the Switch 1, and so forth. And the poor Wii U all the way at #10 with 9,000.
I must hilariously laugh. While the Switch 2 was dominating the world, Sony put out a statement today, "We're still here." How pathetically sad is that?
Well, I mean, like, there are people saying that Sony should be a little concerned because of younger players that are not really into Sony nowadays. They're more into Nintendo and Xbox and PC, you know. Some are really not into PlayStation as much. And some people are worried about the long-term success of Sony. And I'm just like, look, Sony's going to have their fans. They are.
Oh, yeah.
But they may not be #1 again. This hybrid thing of Nintendo still does great and Sony can't match it and stuff, then Nintendo's going to be #1 for a long time.
Because which one has the more detailed third party, that's over.
Yeah.
That's over. It's an even playing field now.
Yeah.
What's it going to come down to? Who has the better first party? And I'll give you a guess. It's either A, Nintendo Switch 2, B, Nintendo Switch 2, or C, Nintendo Switch 2, or D, all of the above.
I mean, you don't just get quality, you get quantity and quality on the first party, because people are like, well, I loved Astrobot. Yeah, what else was there, though?
Yeah, and they said it was a huge hit. Sales numbers say otherwise.
It was a small hit. I mean...
A small hit.
Yeah.
I said not a huge hit.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It didn't sell the way like one of their Spider-Man of God of War or some of this other stuff sold. But it did okay. I mean, you know, it did good. I wish it had done better, because I think it's a wonderful little game.
I honestly think it was on the wrong system.
Unfortunately, Sony has focused too much on M-rated cinematic games too much. But anyway, let's get back to the Switch 2. This is nothing but gravy for the Switch 2, because these third-party games selling incredibly well. Capcom said thanks to Street Fighter 6 on the Switch 2, it gave a huge boost to Street Fighter 6, and now it's over 5 million units sold, whereas just a couple of weeks ago Capcom had it at 4.6 million units. So I'm not saying 100% of those sales came from the Switch 2, but I'm betting at least 300,000 of those sales, at least 250 to 300,000 came from the Switch 2. And Cyberpunk is the #1 selling Switch 2 third-party game so far, and that has probably done a lot better, basically because it's on physical, and Nintendo fans still love physical.
Yep, that's me.
Yeah, it is. So here's hoping for a Nintendo Direct, because this is nothing but great news for Nintendo.
Well, I know, and really, folks...
Well, heck, the video game industry.
Yeah, Nintendo's not had their big holiday surprise yet.
No.
They've not announced it, and they're going to.
I mean, what amazes me, it makes me laugh and sad at all the people. And I know one of our subscribers is going to be like, well, that's really not the majority. I'm not talking about the majority. I'm talking about the loudest voices who like to use clickbait rage to get views. Well, what are you going to do now? The Switch 2 is continuously selling out. The games are selling. And maybe not you people who just hate every single thing Nintendo does, but in reality, people who buy the Switch 2, most of them love it.
Yeah.
They actually like it better than their Switch 1. And listen to the incredible player essence. All of your Switch 1 games get some sort of boost when you play it on the Switch 2. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are like a brand new game, which a lot of people said it is an incredible game now when you fix what a lot of people did not like about it. Echoes of Wisdom. People said it's like a brand new game. Bayonetta. So many games now. The online plays a lot better. The game frame rate's a lot better. The resolution gets bumped up a little bit. In Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Switch 2, the resolution actually goes up just a tiny bit. You know, it's not a big jump like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but it's a little jump, you know, you see a little more detail and stuff.
Well, I want to say, folks, really, you got to be careful who you really listen to these days.
Yeah.
I mean, OJ, Player Essence,
Yeah.
Doc Trey.
Yep.
One phony who turned out to be, as we just found out, is Around the Clock. He's a clickbaiter now.
He said that there was already an incident of Joy-Con 2 drift, and actually it wasn't drift. What it is, misalignment.
Yeah,
you
the
know?
misalignment.
And unfortunately, not every system is going to be perfect when it launches. So I wouldn't doubt if there wasn't a couple of Joy-Cons busted or drifting or whatever, because that's just the name of the beast, you know.
I know.
But misinformation, and I'm really surprised that Around the Clock bought into this.
Like I said, when people start losing or not getting popular, they always choose the clickbait instead of the truth.
Yeah, not all our videos get the same amount of views, but the thing is, I can proudly say that our content is consistent, and we try our best to get the information as accurate as we can.
And if we get it wrong, we admit it.
Yeah, like...
I mean, we're not always right.
No, nobody is,
No.
you know? I mean, Sean and I have gotten things wrong.
But we will never resort to clickbait.
No.
Never.
No. I laugh when a few people have said, why are you doing clickbait? I'm like, this is not clickbait.
Oh.
You know, but anyway, let's just get back to finishing up our thoughts. I'm extremely excited, and just like the guy from Borderlands, Randy Patchard, I think is his name. They're building the Switch 2 version from the ground up of
Borderlands 4.
Right. I think you're going to see more third parties do that to ensure that the game runs on the Switch 2 very well, because of how well these third party games are starting to sell on the Switch 2.
Because guess what that means, folks? The Borderlands 4 game will be built on the Switch 2. The PlayStation 5 and Xbox and them are going to get ported over, and I think that's hilarious.
And already Daemon X Machina is...
It's going to be built from the Switch 2 up.
Yep.
And it's going to be ported over to the other system.
Yeah, so Tom and I are going to do a separate video about... Some people are wondering whether the Witcher 4 will come to the Switch 2, Grand Theft Auto 6. And, well, you know what? Let's just clear that up right now.
They will.
Because, see, and Dot Trey gave these phonies them seats, baby. They're like, well, The Witcher 4 is going to easily run 4K 60 frames per second in PlayStation 5. Will the Switch 2 be able to handle this? If the PlayStation 5 can do it easily, so will the Switch 2.
Yeah.
The games you should be worried about is if a game is struggling to run on the PlayStation 5, then it would be like, ooh, is this going to come to the Switch 2 or, any other system if it's having trouble running on a PS5, or an Xbox Series X. But if it can run really well on a Series X or a PS5, then it's going to run really well on a Switch 2. Look at Cyberpunk. A lot of people were just like, it'll be a train wreck on the Switch 2, and it wasn't. Because they finally got it optimized really well for the PS5 and Series X. And guess what? A lot of people are like, well, Switch 2 version looks almost as good as them. And I'm just like, yeah, and that's going to be the same thing with Grand Theft Auto and The Witcher 4. They're going to be able to run on the Switch 2. And that's another thing. This is only the first year for this system. If you think they've hit the power already and figured out everything, you're wrong. They're going to figure out how to use the system better as time goes by, and stuff's going to look better, play better. So the fact that they're already getting their games this good looking already out of the gate, that's scary. And the fact that Cyberpunk was built for the Switch 2 in under 6 months total development, that's amazing. I cannot wait to see what these developers do with future games for the Switch 2, and it scares the hell out of me to think what Next Level Games, Monolith Soft, and Retro Studios can do with this much horsepower.
And it scares Sony and the rest of the video game media as well.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't like it when we rub it in. You guys got to remember something. We're here to defend, and yes, we can be fair. But are we Nintendo fans?
Yes, we are.
And we're tired of the video game media lying on Nintendo,
Rating them.
Right, and giving, like, Sony, their video games, basically, as long as it plays, they'll give it good reviews.
Even if there's tons of bugs.
Right, just... God of War Ragnarok, anyone? Okay, Astrobot played really well. It had little to no
Baldur's Gate 3.
That but yeah, I know what you mean.
But still.
Yeah.
That had more bugs than a Roach Motel.
Yeah, it did. But that's why we do this, because we're sick and tired of the video game media giving Sony and them an easier, like, their standards with Sony and them or Nintendo is so high that...
Which is stupid.
And I'm just like, Jesus Christ, I know we don't want Nintendo to get lazy, of course not. But nobody is going to reinvent the wheel every single time they make a game. Not even your precious Larian Studios does that. Baldur's Gate 3 didn't do nothing really innovative. But anyway, I am glad for the Switch 2, and believe me, there's a lot of games that haven't been announced yet for the Switch 2 that are going to get announced. And in another video Sean and I are going to do, we're going to talk about games we cannot wait to see for the Switch 2. Hint for me, Resident Evil Requiem, baby. Can't wait to see that one on the Switch 2. But congratulations, Nintendo, and to all the haters, the deckheads, the ponies, and all the rest of you guys, it sucks to be you.
Yeah, suck it, losers!
Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be a monster, just like the first one. And if you think it's selling really big right now, just wait till Nintendo shows off the new Smash Brothers, Mario 3D, Splatoon, the next 3D Zelda, and who knows what else and Animal Crossing. Just wait till all them games are shown. You guys are going to lose your minds. This is me, Michelle Nantucket.
And this is Sean.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for staying to the end of the video and watching it. If you like all of our videos, note to join our other social medias like TikTok, Discord, Reddit, Instagram, Thread, X, and our WordPress blog. You can also support us by joining Patreon for as little as $1 a month, where you will get exclusive content, uncut videos, behind the scenes, watch that trailer, Jack's Joke of the Week, and my sports input. If you join the $25 tier, I will send you an autographed copy of the Buzzies for free. If you love horror movies and independent content, we're a great place to come and visit because we love supporting other independent creators and stuff. When you support us, you're supporting people who do all of this by ourselves. Hey Michelle, I'm the editor, I'm the director of the videos, I'm the producer, Sean's the executive producer and content creator. So thank you everybody, and please look into supporting our Patreon as it really does help out. Just $1 a month. Thank you and have a wonderful day.